the hatred that the devil has for God and for those of us who are created in his image is incalculable. That's very important to understand when we're trying to figure out how can there be all this evil in the world. That's super important to understand. So why wouldn't God just kick the devil's ass once and for all and put him in his place and fix all this? He's going to. He's been working on that for a long time. God's decision to put man in charge of the earth is still in play, and he's working. His intention is actually to work through us to do that very thing. He wants us to be co-laborers with him. I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit, but we are supposed to be co-laborers with God in this fight against the devil. Jesus came to destroy the works of the devil. So if Jesus is so powerful, why hasn't he destroyed the works of the devil? Well, because it involves people like me and anybody else that says they follow Jesus. We're supposed to be about that. We're supposed to be about the Father's business, which is destroying the works of the devil, for one thing. But, we get a little busy sometimes. We got to make some money, or we want to go on a nice vacation or whatever. And that's all good. It's all fine. But we don't necessarily take what the Bible says seriously. That's a whole other thing. So maybe I should just get back to the story. But so the devil's hatred for God and for all of us is incalculable. Now, here's what happens in the garden. Adam and Eve are doing their thing. We don't know how long they were there, but along comes the devil. The Bible describes it as a serpent, but it might have been more of a dragon or some incredible, gorgeous creature or whatever, because later on, after the sin happens, God curses that creature and says you're going to crawl on your belly. So it probably started off as something that wasn't crawling on its belly, and then it was made to do so after the fact. But the devil comes along, and he says to Adam and Eve a couple things. First, he tries to get them to doubt what God said. He says, did God really say you're not supposed to eat of that tree? But he doesn't just do that. He gets them to doubt God's motivation for what he said. They're like, yeah, I think that's what he said. And the devil's like, he's just saying that because he doesn't want you to be like him. So long story short, the devil tricks Adam and Eve. He's talking, the way the Bible plays it out, he's talking mainly to Eve. And she takes the fruit of the tree and eats it. And sin enters the world. But then it goes on to say, she gave the fruit to Adam, who was there with her. As you're reading the story, it almost seems like it's just the devil and Eve having this conversation. Eve doesn't know he's the devil. God didn't necessarily say anything about the devil. We don't have any recorded history of that. The Bible doesn't talk about that. Like, he doesn't say, don't eat from that tree, and also don't listen to that other guy that's roaming around out there. He doesn't say that. He just puts it before them. You can call it a test, maybe. He just says, don't do that. And so it's up to them. It's up to them to either, like I said earlier, either obey him, trust him, love him, or not. So the devil comes along and he tricks him. But Eve takes, after she eats the fruit, she gives it to Adam, and it says she gives it to Adam who was with her. So we know he was there the whole time, apparently just not speaking up, the old passive thing there. But when Adam and Eve sinned, that's what Christians refer to as original sin. And sin entered the world at that time. When sin comes onto the scene, it brings with it death and suffering of all sorts. Basically, the whole thing broke in that moment. Adam and Eve broke the world with their sin. God created a world that was absolutely perfect, everything in perfect balance. When they sinned, that brought on death, it brought on suffering, it brought on entropy. Literally, there was no entropy before sin. It brought on a whole host of different evils. Turtle cheesecake makes me fat, and I think it's part of the sin from Adam and Eve. It's the injustice of it, and a bunch of other things. You know where I'm going. I don't have to describe the suffering because we're all familiar with it. And that changed everything. Now, God's not shocked by what happened. I think, obviously, as an all-knowing God, he knew this would happen. He gave them the choice anyway, because he wanted them to have free will. Now, remember what I said about the dominion that God had given to Adam and Eve. So not only did sin and death and decay, entropy and pain and suffering, all that stuff, not only did that enter the world when they sinned, but they gave the dominion of the earth that God had given to Adam and Eve, they gave it to the devil. The authority to rule the earth became the devil's. So at that point, he truly did rule this planet. Some Christians think he still rules this planet.